5 spine-chilling fall hiking tales revealed. Terrifying encounters that expose cursed trails. Emma took a deep breath as the crisp autumn air filled her lungs. The vibrant orange and red leaves swirled around her as she parked the car. She just wanted a weekend free from the gnawing anxiety of her recent job loss. With her 10-year-old son, Liam, and her 8-year-old daughter, Sophie, by her side, she hoped that the beauty of the Appalachian Mountains would ignite some much-needed joy. But as they approached the trailhead, a chill ran down Emma's spine. A whispered warning floated through the air. The locals talking hushed about the notorious cursed trails. She shook her head, dismissing the ominous murmurs as urban legends from the city. However, even as they stepped onto the forest path, little tremors of fear prickled at her spine. A man, wild-eyed and unkempt, suddenly loomed in their path. "Beware!" he shouted, his voice thick with urgency. "These trails take those who are unprepared, lost forever in the shadows." Emma felt the kids tense. She plastered on a brave smile, deflecting the hermitess warning as a silly superstition. "See, kids? Just old stories meant to scare curious hikers." But their wide, anxious eyes told her otherwise. Emma clutched Liam's hand tighter, trying to project confidence she didn't quite feel. With every step, the air grew heavier. The twisted trees closed in around them. A branch cracked loudly in the distance. The sound sliced through the serene beauty like a knife, making Emma flinch. "Did you hear that?" Liam whispered, looking back at the shadows. Sophie squeezed her brother's hand. The innocence of childhood seemed to dissolve in the growing darkness. Just then, the wind shifted, carrying a soft murmur, almost like voices flitting about. Silly thoughts crept in. Nightmares of the forest swept into Emma's mind, feeding on her insecurities as a mother. After all, they were alone in an endless maze, stripped of the comforts of home, the city lights. As they ventured deeper, the trail twisted like a serpent, obscuring their path. Everything felt unfamiliar now. "Mom, can we go back?" Sophie asked, voice trembling. Her heart raced, panic clawing at her throat. "Let's just keep going a little longer, okay? We'll turn around soon," Emma said, determination lacing her voice. But in her heart, shadows surged with doubt, gnawing at her confidence. They pressed on, the winding trail seeming to mock them. As dusk painted the sky a bruised purple, something flitted just beyond the trees. Liam gasped, pointing. "Did you see that?" Emma turned sharply, her heart pounding in her chest. The stories whispered through her mind. Disappearances, unexplainable phenomena. These woods held secrets, dark and terrible secrets. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just then, Emma spotted a flickering light up ahead. Relief coursed through her. Maybe it was a campsite, perhaps even a ranger station. Maybe it could offer the safe haven they so desperately needed. Moving towards it, hope ignited only to flicker out when they stumbled upon a crumbling cabin, cloaked in an eerie, unnatural silence. Inside, the air felt thick, laden with despair. In the peeling walls lingered stories of betrayal. Emma's pulse quickened. They weren't just lost, they were being watched. Outside, shadows surged around them, whispering secrets. Danger lurked beyond the frame of the dilapidated window, and she grasped her children close. They stood frozen, hearts pounding, terror wrapping around them like thorny vines. What awaited them in these cursed woods? The twisted trails called them deeper into the dark. Would they become just another face in the crowd of whispers? Or could she save her family from a fate worse than the urban troubles they had escaped? Emma had to find a way out before the trail claimed them all. The cabin loomed murky and foreboding, each beam and creak telling tales of long-lost visitors. Emma leaned in, her breath catching in her throat as she strained to hear. Outside, the whispering shadows grew louder, but inside, a cloying silence enveloped them like a thick fog. "Mom, can we go home?" Sophie's voice was a mere thread of sound, quaking with fear. Emma forced a smile, but her heart raced with every beat. She glanced around, noticing a dusty table oddly out of place amid the decay. There, a single, tattered journal lay half open, as if someone had put it down in a hurry. "Stay close," she whispered as she approached it. Her fingertips tingled as she brushed against the leather cover. Felt cold like death. "Emma!" Liam's voice cut through her thoughts, filled with urgency. She turned to see him staring wide-eyed at the window. "Mom, look!" The forest outside twisted with movement, shadows darting between the trees like dark fish under murky water. A chill snaked its way down Emma's spine. She glanced back at the journal, wrestling with the urge to delve into its pages and unveil its secrets. But the fear of what awaited them outside pulled at her with an undeniable force. Emma opened the journal, only to be met with frantic scrawls and hastily drawn maps. The writing spoke of lost hikers, strange encounters, and unnamable horrors hiding in the woods. Her breath hitched. This doesn't make sense," she murmured. "What happened to them?" "Emma, can we just leave?" Sophie whimpered as she stepped closer, pressing against Emma's side. "Please." Then, a shrill cry erupted from the darkness outside, sharp and desperate. Emma dropped the journal, her heart hammering in her chest. "What was that?" "I don't know," Liam whispered, stepping back, his eyes wide with fear. Emma's instincts screamed at her to flee, but the sagging walls of the cabin made it feel like a trap. Just then, the door creaked open slightly, and a smell of decay and damp earth wafted in. She felt a pull, something dragging her thoughts into the corners of her mind that she didn't want to explore. "Stay together," she urged, tightening her grip on her children as they huddled closer. The shadows beyond the threshold danced as if beckoning them. In an instant, Emma turned to the children, and there was a flicker of defiance in her eyes. "We need to leave now." But as she stepped toward the door, something cold brushed against her ankle, sending an icy shiver through her bones. She looked down, gasping. The floor itself seemed to writhe, as though alive, pulling her back. Panic spiked within her as she tried to pull free, but the grip tightened. "Mom!" Liam shouted, his young face twisted with fear. "What is happening?" Sophie cried, her voice trembling. In an effort to break free, Emma kicked out, but it was like fighting quicksand. The air grew thick, and muffled whispers clawed at her ears, shouting words she couldn't comprehend. "No, I want tea, let it take us." With every ounce of strength, she lunged forward, finally breaking its grip. But the sensation left her rattled. They stumbled outside, where the shadows flared into sinister forms, and the cries grew louder. Their escape ignited a surge of frantic energy. It was now or never. As they dashed away, Emma's heart pounded like a drum, echoing the urgency of each footfall. The trail lay ahead, dark and twisted, shrouded in shadows. But she could hear them now, distant wails mingling with the rustling leaves, shadows chasing close behind. Would they retrace their steps back into darkness or forge a new path and confront whatever haunted these cursed trails? The choice loomed ominously before them as they pressed deeper into the gathering night, desperate to flee the horrors they had only just begun to uncover. Emma's ultimate test of survival hung heavy in the air. Were they strong enough to face their nightmarish fate? The forest closed in around them, branches clawing at their clothes like skeletal fingers. Emma fought against the rising tide of panic in her throat as she led Liam and Sophie deeper into the oppressive darkness. Every step sent showers of dry leaves crackling underfoot, disturbing whatever entity lurked nearby. It was as if the trees were leaning closer, listening to their every breath. "Mom, I can't see," Sophie shrieked, her voice tremoring with fear. "Just hold my hand," Emma shouted back, trying to keep her own voice steady. The night was thick with an unnatural darkness, swallowing the little light that dared to break through. Her heart raced, pounding an ominous rhythm in her chest. With every few steps, an invisible weight pressed down on them, suffocating even the smallest glimmer of hope. The shadows flickered and twisted like spirits trapped in the flimsy fabric of the night. Was it her imagination? Or was one of them closer, just beyond the trees, watching them with unseen eyes? Keep moving. We have to get out of here. The urgency in her voice pushed them onward. But behind them came whispered echoes, soft, sorrowful wails that chilled Emma to the bone. They carried the weight of secrets long buried. She felt a visceral pull toward the sound, an inexplicable longing to turn back, to listen. "Mom, please," Liam panted, tugging at her arm. "I don't want to go back." "Neither do I," Emma breathed, gritting her teeth. The threat of the cabin loomed in her mind, the unkempt journal left open, the cold floor that seemed alive. It wanted them back. As they continued, the trees began to shift, forming a tighter corridor. The air felt electric, charged with something predatory. Then, a sudden wave of silence rolled over them, cutting through the wails. Not even the wind whispered anymore. "What's happening?" Sophie asked, her voice a fragile thread, trembling in the heavy air. Emma turned to her children, seeing the terror reflected in their eyes. For a moment, she felt a flicker of calm, an urge to reassure them that everything would be fine until a low growl reverberated through the woods. It was deep and guttural, reverberating in Emma's chest, making her muscles tense. "Run!" she shouted, yanking them forward, pushing through the darkness with desperation. But the forest floor suddenly became treacherous, roots snaking out like claws, threatening to trip them. "Faster!" she demanded, fear flooding her voice. But the way ahead was murky, twisting, and the shadows appeared to thicken. Yet the sounds followed slithering footsteps just on the edge of hearing, closer and closer. Suddenly, a scream shattered the stillness, a sharp, piercing sound that cut through Emma's racing heart. It echoed all around them, and she skidded to a halt. It had come from the man-made path they had turned away from. "Did you hear that?" Liam's voice cracked, wide-eyed with dread. "Mom, please, let us go back," Sophie whimpered, pulling on Emma's sleeve. "No," Emma barked, fear asserting dominance over any rational thought. They couldn't return. To do so was to walk willingly into death. But the screams echoed again, a voice already familiar, yet twisted. "The cabin. We should have never left." A new sense of urgency swept through Emma as she pulled them away from the sound, but it tugged at her mind like a siren's call. "Must find shelter," she'd thought, desperately racking her brain for a safe haven. But then, a flicker of light glimmered through the trees, faint but undeniable. Was it salvation, or a deceptive lure to draw them further into the nightmare? Emma hesitated, the thrum of dread pounding in her ears. "Mom?" Glimpses of figures darted in the flickering light, shadows moving with a sinister dance, and a part of her felt compelled to step into that light, regardless of the danger. They stood at a crossroads, shadows pressing in from all sides, and behind them, the wails rose once more, a chorus of the lost. "Mom, we have to move," Sophie cried, pulling on Emma's sleeve again. With dread tightening in her stomach, Emma made her choice. But the light seemed to pulse with an eerie life of its own, unearthing a deeper darkness lurking beyond. "Stay close," Emma whispered, taking a deep breath and pushing forward toward the unknown. But as they approached, everything around them felt alive. They weren't just running from the forest. They were running toward something or someone. Would the path lead them back to safety or toward a darker fate? The trees closed in around them, tightening their grip. Emma felt time slipping away as fear raced to consume them. What awaited them in that flickering light? Would they find hope or peril? The light flickered, now brighter, illuminating a small clearing ahead amidst the oppressive gloom of the forest. With each step, Emma's heart hammered louder in her chest, the distant howls silenced momentarily by a wave of conflicting emotions. Was this hope beckoning them? Or was it the siren call of danger? "Mom, are we going to die?" Sophie's voice trembled as she clung tightly to Emma's hand, her small fingers cold and slick with sweat. "No," Emma replied, forcing a calm into her voice that didn't exist. "We just need to keep moving." They burst into the clearing, and Emma's breath caught in her throat. A dilapidated shed stood at the edge, its wood dark and weathered. Each board seemed to creak under the weight of ages, and the door hung slightly ajar, swinging as if waiting for them. Shadows flitted behind the shed, distorted figures that seemed to watch and wait. "Mom, we shouldn't go there," Liam urged. Fear dripped from every word, and for a moment, all she could hear was the pounding of her heart and the distant rustle of leaves. "Maybe it's safe," Emma whispered, but doubt nipped at her thoughts. Making a choice was unbearable, but she had to decide for the kids. Just as she took a step, a blaring howl erupted from deep in the woods, reverberating with such deep anguish it made her skin crawl. It was as if the forest itself wept, and the shadows around the shed began to twist, joining the horrific orchestra of cries. "No!" Emma shouted, her mind spiraling. She glanced back, but the forest was an endless sea of darkness, swallowing the path from which they had come. "Inside!" she barked, urgency clawing at her throat. They rushed to the shed, pushing the heavy door wide, and stepped inside. The moment they crossed the threshold, a chill settled in the air, wrapping around them like a vice. The smell of damp earth and dirt engulfed them, mingling with something else, something metallic, perhaps blood. They huddled in the dimness, the weak light cutting through dust motes dancing in the air, making the shadows stretch and flicker. Emma strained to catch any sounds. Was there something lurking just outside? The harsh cries had faded but seemed to ripple against the walls. "Mom, I don't like it here," Sophie whimpered, practically melding into Emma's side. "Shoo, it's okay." Emma's voice wavered. She reached out to comfort her daughter but couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. A creeping dread slithered up her spine. They weren't alone in this suffocating darkness. As her eyes adjusted, Emma scanned the tiny room. Old tools hung from rusty nails, and in the corner, a thick layer of dust blanketed a table covered in strange symbols carved deep into the wood. A haunting chill raced through her as she read them, as if each word whispered a warning. "Mom, what's that?" Liam asked, pointing at a large, tattered book lying open on the table. Emma stepped closer. The pages seemed to shimmer. The illustrations were grotesque, depicting twisted figures interwoven with branches, their faces contorted in anguish. And the text written in a scrawling hand spoke of a curse, a history of bloodshed that had never ended. Before Emma could respond, a loud bang echoed outside. The shed creaked around them, and the shadows pooled at the door. "Something's here," Liam whispered. Without thinking, Emma grabbed the book, the weight of it heavy in her hands, and turned to the door just as it flung open. A gust of icy wind howled inside, blowing apart the cobwebs in the corners. And there, framed in the doorway, stood a figure cloaked in darkness, a terror made flesh, its eyes glowing with malicious intent. "Leave this place," it growled, a low rumble that reverberated through her bones. Emma's heart raced into a frenzied beat. "Run!" she screamed before she could think, hoping against hope that the shadows wouldn't chase them down again. But how could they escape when the very forest seemed to awaken, closing in with an insatiable hunger? Was this the end, or was it just the beginning? The horror kept creeping closer, and in that moment, Emma knew she needed to understand the twisted history of this forest, or they would never see the light of day again. The air was electric with fear as the shadows pressed against them. Emma's instincts screamed for her to protect her children, but where to run? Time stretched, and in the blink of an eye, the dark figure lunged toward them, its presence overwhelming. "Mom!" screamed Sophie, her eyes wide with terror. "Get back!" Emma shouted, pushing her limbs into motion. She felt the cold chill of the figure's breath even as she pulled Liam and Sophie closer, shoving past the threshold of the shed into the nightmarish forest. As they dashed out, Emma could feel the weight of the book clutched under her arm, a burden but also a lifeline. With every stride, the underbrush crunched beneath them, echoing in the silence that surrounded, thick and suffocating. The howl returned, a mournful sound that cut through the trees, an echo of warning or sorrow. She dared not look back. The malicious eyes lingered in her mind, glowing in the dim light. They raced deeper into the forest, branches snagging at their clothes, as if the trees themselves sought to claim them. Emma's heart thudded, pounding like a war drum. Every breath became harder, stinging her lungs. "This way," she shouted, veering down a narrow path, a faint flicker of instinct guiding her, a hope that maybe this path was the one whispered about in the cursed text. "Mom, what's happening?" Liam's voice trembled, laced with fear. "Just keep running," she cried out, desperation clawing at her throat. But the shadows pursued them. The howls grew closer, a chorus of despair that seemed to pulse through the very air. Suddenly, a figure darted out from the trees. A wild, haggard man with matted hair and eyes that glimmered like shattered glass stumbled into their path. His presence was haunting. "You must go back. You don't understand," he gasped, collapsing to his knees. "Help us," Emma shouted, heart racing. "Something is chasing us." "You shouldn't have come here," he rasped, his voice barely a whisper. "The darkness. It won't let you leave." A chilling wind swept past them, amplifying the man's words. From behind him, the shadows seemed to writhe, hungry and intent. Emma saw Sophie tremble, knuckles white as she held onto her brother, the child's innocent terror sharp enough to wound. "Please," Liam pleaded, "tell us how to stop it." The man's eyes flickered with a spark of something, fear? Hope? "The book. You have to burn it under the full moon at the altar." Before he could finish, the screaming howl echoed, loud and furious, silencing him. The ground began to tremble. Emma could feel the darkness closing, coiling around them like a serpent. "Run!" she screamed, pulling the kids past the man. They thundered deeper into the forest, branches snapping against their skin. Emma's mind raced, torn between the cryptic warning and her children's safety. Then silence. What had been a relentless cacophony faded, and they paused, catching their breath. Breathing hard, Emma strained to listen. Where was the malevolent figure? Had it given up after them? But something was wrong. The shift in the air felt unnatural. It was too quiet. Suddenly, Liam gasped. "Mom, look!" Emma turned and her blood turned to ice. There, in the distance, a faint light flickered like a campfire. Relief and dread battled within her. Could it be safety or the lure of more shadows waiting to strike? "Is it safe?" Sophie whispered, voice trembling. Emma lingered on the edge of hope and fear, feeling the weight of the book heavy in her arms. What if the answer to their survival lay there? The truth behind the curse was just beyond their reach, and she had to make a choice. "Do we go toward the light?" she murmured to herself, glancing back into the thickening shadows. The darkness swirled, and a chilling voice echoed through the trees. "You'll never escape." Was the fire their escape, or the trap that would seal their fate? Emma took a deep breath, clutching the book tighter as the fear clawed back at her heart. "Stay close," she whispered to her children, approaching the eerie glow, every step heavy with uncertainty. Would this lead them to salvation or plunge them deeper into terror? The path ahead remained shrouded in darkness, and all she could do was move forward. With each cautious step, the flickering light grew clearer, illuminating the trees around them with a warm, amber hue that felt both inviting and sinister. Emma strained her senses, trying to detect even the faintest whisper of danger lurking in the darkness. "Mom, it looks like a fire," Liam said, his voice breaking through the silence. She could hear his hope, a desperate longing for safety, but dread prickled at the back of her neck. They could be walking straight into a trap. "We need to be careful," Emma warned, keeping her voice low. The book under her arm felt like a ticking bomb, heavy with the weight of its secrets. They crept closer, the light casting elongated shadows that danced between the trees. As they reached the clearing, the fire crackled, flickering in a cozy manner, stark against the oppressive forest. A makeshift circle of stones surrounded it, but something about the setup didn't feel right. The air was heavy with an unnerving tension. Smoke curled around their nostrils, a bittersweet scent of burnt wood, but with an undercurrent that hinted at something else, something charred and foul. Liam nudged closer, eyeing the flames hungrily. "Mom, Can we sit down for a minute, please? Emma shook her head. We can't. We have to keep moving. Sophie clutched her brother's arm, her eyes darting between the warmth of the fire and the encroaching darkness. What if they have food? She whispered. Emma's mind raced back to the man's warning. The altar, the book. The urge to run was overwhelming, but greater still was the pull of curiosity. What if the fire held answers? Wait here, she said abruptly, pushing the children behind a tree. With her heart pounding in her chest, she edged toward the flames, gripping the book tighter. Instincts screamed for her to turn back, but a strange compulsion drew her in closer. As she stepped through the underbrush, a gust of wind howled through the clearing, and the flames flickered violently, almost as if the fire was aware of her approach. I should burn you, she muttered under her breath, horrified by the thought but desperate for the doom that had followed them. Then she noticed them. The shadows didn't retreat. They lingered just beyond the light, shifting and writhing, almost watching. In the flicker of the flames, faces appeared anguished, contorted. They wore expressions of agony, mouths open in silent screams. A chill crept up her spine. Emma stumbled backward, her breath hitching. Liam, Sophie. But as she turned to call out to her children, they were already gone. Panic surged through her chest. No, no, she called out frantically, scanning the darkness. Then she noticed the shadows were advancing, stretching toward her with predatory intent. The fire crackled, but the warmth felt deceiving. Where are you? She whispered, her voice trembling. She dashed around the clearing, frantic. Liam! Their laughter echoed back to her, eerily dissonant against the dark sky. Was it real, or were the shadows manipulating her senses? Emma gripped the book tighter, glancing back at the dance of the flames. It felt alive, a gateway to whatever cursed force held them in its cruel embrace. Then a rustle. Emma spun around just in time to see Liam and Sophie emerge from behind a tree, faces pale. Mom, we didn't mean to. We just heard. Liam stammered, trembling as Sophie clung to him. Emma's heart raced. We have to leave. Now. But as she turned toward the path they came from, she found it blocked, the shadows twisting and merging into an impenetrable wall. The dark voice resonated again, low and mocking. You'll never escape, trapped. Emma felt the weight of despair press down upon her, drowning any flicker of hope. The fire sizzled, an ominous reminder of consequences yet to come. The forest loomed larger, darker. Mom, what do we do? Liam asked, voice cracking. Emma's throat tightened. The altar, we have to get to the altar. But the shadows closed in, and she wondered, even if they reached the altar, would they be able to end the curse, or would it only bind them tighter in its dark embrace? As the flames dimmed and the shadows advanced, she remembered the man's words. Was there a way out, or had they already sealed their fate? The air thickened as she made her choice, edging closer to the fire and its secrets. What lay ahead was uncertain, but the darkness would find them if they stood still. Could they escape the curse that clutched at their heels, or would they become part of the whispers in the wind? Emma could only take one shaky step forward. The fire's flickering light cast shadows that seemed to breathe, manipulating the darkness around them, creating shapes that danced menacingly at the edges of Emma's vision. She gripped the book so tightly that her knuckles whitened, the leather's texture rough against her fingers. She wanted to scream, to turn and run, but her body remained paralyzed, fueled by a toxic mix of dread and curiosity. Mom! Liam's voice broke through the thickening haze of fear, bringing her focus back. His eyes were wide, reflecting the firelight like two small beacons in the creeping dark. What do we do? Stay close, she urged, her heart hammering in her chest. I need you both to stick together. We're going to find the altar. The word felt foreign, slipping from her lips, loaded with a weight of consequences she could hardly grasp. Shadows swirled closer now, a menacing barrier that twisted and writhed, hungry for something, perhaps for them. Each breath she took felt heavy, thick with the acrid smoke that filled the air, but she forced herself to inhale, to push through the terror. We have to find the right path, she whispered, trying to sound more confident than she felt. But deep down, the forest felt alive, a beast lying in wait, ready to pounce. Underneath the whisper of the leaves, a low voice slithered through the air, like fog wrapping around her thoughts. "You think you can escape?" Taunted. The shadows pulsed and darkened, and she couldn't escape the feeling that the trees were leaning in, eager to listen. Suddenly, the fire snapped loudly, sending sparks flying. Sophie jumped, her small hands balling into fists. "Mom, I don't like this." Neither did Emma, but there was no time for fear. "We need to move," she commanded, her voice sharper than she intended. She grabbed Liam and Sophia's hands, pulling them away from the grasping shadows. They navigated around the perimeter of the clearing, weaving through the brush, the path becoming increasingly fraught with uncertainty. At her side, she could feel her children trembling, not just from the chill in the air but from the palpable essence of fear that shrouded them. "Just a little longer," she coaxed, her voice trembling despite her efforts. The way ahead twisted like the labyrinth that held them captive. Moonlight stabbed through the thinning branches overhead, illuminating a strange rock formation that jutted from the ground. Emma's breath caught. The altar. Was this it? Was this the place mentioned in the book, the place where they could break the curse? But the moment they neared it, a low, guttural growl reverberated throughout the clearing, chilling her to the bone. The shadows coiled tighter, transforming from an abstract threat to a living being. Dark tendrils emerged, stretching across the ground like a creeping vine. Emma pulled the children closer, shielding them with her body. "We can't stay here. We must get to the altar," she cried out, but as they tried to advance, the ground beneath them felt unstable, as if the earth itself was conspiring against their escape. "Mom, what if what's in the book is wrong?" Liam asked, fear quivering in his voice. Her heart sank. What if it was? What if they were walking straight into a worse fate? Shadows closed in, the growl intensifying, filling her ears with a spine-chilling cadence. Their escape had become a trap, and the altar, once a beacon of hope, now loomed ominously before them, a potential death sentence. "We have to trust," she whispered, more to herself than to the children. But as the shadows lunged, slashing through the night with venomous speed, her grip on the book loosened. It dropped, thudding against the earth. A surge of darkness exploded from the book and enveloped Emma. She gasped, the world spinning as fragments of terrifying visions clawed at her mind. Screams echoed, faces twisted in agony, haunting her with their despair. "Mom!" She heard Liam scream over the cacophony of horror, his voice immediately grounding her. But as she fought against the shadows, she felt it. The malevolent force was pulling her down. What would come next? With no way to know whether to resist or surrender, her pulse raced faster than ever. As she felt herself being drawn into the depths of despair, she clutched at whatever sanity remained, scrambling to reach the altar, her last hope flickering just like the dying flames of the fire behind them. Would it save them, or was it the key to their doom? The curse had already begun feeding, and she had to act before they lost themselves entirely to the darkness. The shadows surged forward, tendrils aimed at enveloping Emma and her children. "Run!" she screamed, shaking off the grip of the suffocating darkness trying to claim her. She slammed her foot into the ground, pushing herself to sprint toward the altar, a desperate gamble for their survival. Everything blurred around her as they fled, Emma's heart pounding like a war drum. The growls intensified, harmonizing with her children's breaths that grew ragged beside her. Liam stumbled, struggling to keep pace. Emma felt her resolve teetering, the urge to turn around, to protect them at all costs, screaming against the drive to escape. "Stay behind me," she yelled, the air cold and stinging against her skin. Somehow, ahead, the altar pulsed softly, a glimmering outline taunting the malevolence choking the woods. Then, a piercing shriek tore through the air, slicing her resolve. It wasn't human, more like an animal's death cry, echoing with lingering pain. Emma's stomach twisted at the sound. "Don't look back." Liam's hand slipped from hers, and the jolt of panic that shot through her was electric. In an instant, she turned, finding him frozen, eyes wide in terror. His mouth open wide but no sound came out. The shadows coiled around, slithering through the underbrush like serpents on the hunt. "Liam!" she shouted, a desperation clawing at her throat. She lunged back, grabbing his arm and pulling him forward, as Sophie clutched her other hand. They moved as a unit now, a frantic trio against the encroaching dark. With the altar almost within sight, the air shifted. An oppressive weight descended, thickening against their chests. The ground trembled slightly beneath them as dark whispers danced around them, threading through her ears. Join us, then like a beacon. The altar stood ahead, an ancient stone structure, shimmering faintly in a ghostly light. It felt contradictory, inviting yet foreboding. Its surface was etched with symbols, pulsing in rhythm with Emma's heartbeat. She yanked the book from her pocket, struggling to remember the incantation that could save them. "Mom, what does it say?" Liam's voice shook, the terror creeping back into his tone. "I don't know. I can't think." The shadows were closing in, an engulfing black wall ready to swallow them whole. A twisted scream flared up, but this time, it resembled hers, striking a raw nerve. In a moment of clarity, Emma recalled a single line from the book, one that felt crucial. To seal the dark, speak of the heart. Heart. They had to muster their courage, their love. Thinking fast, she turned to her children. "Hold on to my words. Okay? Repeat after me." But Mom, Sophie whimpered, her voice fragile like glass. "Trust me. Please." Emma's heart raced, feeling the shadows inch closer, a cold, consuming dread that whispered promises of despair. They gathered in a tiny huddle, limbs close. Together, Emma shouted, determination coursing through her like fire. "With all my heart, I summon light to break the night." As the last syllable burst from her lips, a beam erupted from the altar, slicing through the darkness like a knife. It was brilliant, blinding, and Emma felt heat surge against her skin, the shadows retreating. But beneath that radiant glow, shadows twisted, screeching in agony. The darkness refused to relent, its hunger surging back with a vengeance, clawing at the edges of the light. "You think you can banish us?" The voice erupted, echoing viciously. A chill crept into Emma's bones. This wasn't over. "Focus," she cried, as fear gripped her tight. "We have to hold on to the light." But just as they were gaining ground, a shape emerged from the haze, a grotesque figure formed from darkness, a twisted silhouette of something barely human. Its eyes glowed with malice, and it is as if the forest itself held its breath. Would they have the strength to complete what they started? Or was this shadow the final chapter in their doom tale? The altar pulsed, light wavering as the thing lurked closer, ready to strike. The figure loomed larger, its presence a smothering weight on Emma's chest. Shadows stretched long behind it, reaching out like fingers desperate to clutch at her and her children. Emma felt paralyzed for a heartbeat, the instinct to run battling with the need to protect. "Stay behind me," she rasped, the urgency cracking her voice like thin ice. The children tightened their hold on her hands, fear crystallizing the air around them. "Mom," Liam whispered, his voice trembling. "What is that thing?" Panic rose in Emma's throat, but she forced a steadying breath. "I don't know, but we're going to fight it." She flipped open the book, hands shaking as she searched the faint glow of the altar's light, desperate for another line, a command. The grotesque silhouette twitched, tendrils of shadow undulating as it seemed to inhale the atmosphere, absorbing their fear. "You think you can fight what dwells here? This darkness is ancient, eternal." Its voice hissed, each syllable laced with bitterness and venom. "Liam, Sophie, we need to," Emma started. But the screech echoed again, drowning her out. The terrifying sound echoed through the trees, startling birds into flight, leaving silence in its wake, unnerving, heavy silence. "Mom, do something," Sophie cried, her small voice breaking. Emma's heart sank at the sight of her daughter's determination covered in a blanket of dread. With a surge of courage, Emma thrust the book forward, its pages fluttering wildly as if alive, the words almost whispering to her. "In the light of love, I command you, be gone, she shouted, hoping to shake off the dread enveloping them. Light pulsed from the altar, a fierce glow that momentarily pushed back the darkness. It illuminated the twisted features of the shadow creature, revealing a face that made Emma's blood run cold. It was itself a nightmare, eyes like voids, sucking hope from the very air. The light cannot banish what is born of despair, it screeched, lunging forward with unnatural speed. Emma felt the rush of cold air against her skin as the figure closed the distance. Hold on, she shouted, pulling her children closer. Remember our love. Think of home. Just then, the altar's light flickered. Tendrils of shadows danced menacingly around it, as if feeding on the strength it once emitted. Mom! Liam gasped, eyes wide with terror as the darkness leapt towards them like a hungry beast, snatching at their very essence. Emma felt her grip falter, panic threading through her resolve. We won't let it take us, she cried, clenching her fists. Together, be the shield. They stood back to back, breathing together, hearts racing, feeding on each other's strength. The words surged through Emma's mind like a flooding river. With love that binds us, we are the light. Casting their voices into the night, they screamed in unison. We will not be your prey. The altar surged again, light brightening, forming a barrier. But the creature halted just short of their defense, a churning growl rumbling deep in its throat. You think this is a battle? You are merely postponing the inevitable in that moment. Emma felt a straining presence on her back, shadows feasting on her energy, tugging her resolve. Doubt began to seep through her, a sinister whisper urging her to give in, to let despair consume them. Sophie felt the tremor in her mother's voice and looked up. Mom! Don't let it win. Emma's resolve ignited anew. They had to summon everything, channel the pure essence of their bond. Liam, Sophie, trust in what we feel. Our love is stronger than this darkness. They responded with fierce declaration, voices raised higher against the rising terror. The altar roared back, a swirling vortex of purity, pushing back against the menacing shadows. Suddenly, the beast lunged, teeth bared, scraping the edge of the fading light. Did Emma have enough strength to push back? Or had she underestimated the force of their enemy? The shadows pressed tighter, reaching for the cracks in her fortitude. Emma braced for impact, heart pounding, and all at once, darkness began to shatter at the seams. Would they be crushed in the chaos of brilliance? Or would their cry split the night completely? The altar flared one last time, illuminating the thick wood encasing them. And then, there was silence. What emerged from the void, however, was far more terrifying than any shadow. A familiar figure twisted and lost, staring from the edge of the darkness. The pulsating energy flickered, and as the veil lifted, Emma understood. She had unwittingly awakened something more monstrous than she could bear. Who had come back? Was this a return or a warning? As Emma's heart dropped, reality cracked like splintered glass around her. The nightmare had only begun. Emma's heart raced, the pulse pulsing in her ears like a war drum. The familiar figure lurked at the edge of the clearing, and as the haze lifted, clarity merged with dread. It was the wild-eyed man, the one who had warned them, his face twisted by shadows, mouth agape, eyes hollow and drowning in sorrow. Help me, he rasped, his voice barely more than a whisper. Emma felt a weight settle in her chest, the realization dawning that he was not merely lost. He was a victim. The shadows flickered around him, desperate to consume him, and her heart fractured seeing how despair had turned human. Stay where you are, she shouted instinctively, wrapping her arms tightly around Liam and Sophie, almost as if her embrace could shield them from the horrors that danced just beyond the light. Don't listen to him, the shadow creature warned, its voice echoing with a chilling resonance. Join me instead. I can offer you power. Escape. The air felt thick with tension. Emma locked her gaze onto the shadowed man. You have to fight it. You were once one of the lucky ones, free from this darkness. From behind the veil of shadows, he nodded weakly, his once vibrant eyes now dulled by the horror that held sway over him. You have to stop it, he gasped, and the shadows wrapped tighter, binding him, almost swallowing him whole. "Mom!" Liam exclaimed, voice trembling. "What if he is telling the truth? What if we can help him?" "No." Emma felt the weight of the decision crashing down on her. They were moments away from a final confrontation. The darkness pulsed, waiting for her to falter. "Leave while you can," the man shouted, losing himself momentarily to the darkness that wrapped around him. "No one escapes," and then darkness erupted from the altar with a roar, an explosion of shadows converging, swirling in a tornado of despair. "Hold on," Emma screamed, gripping her children tighter as they felt the pull of grief encroaching on their hearts. Together, as they stood unified, light began to radiate from the altar once more, sharper, brighter. "We are the light," she declared vehemently, their voices rising to a crescendo. "We will not succumb to the darkness." With a crescent shimmer, the circle of light expanded rapidly, slicing through the encroaching shapes that threatened to engulf them. The shadow creature recoiled, hissing, "You cannot be saved." But they could feel it, the warmth of hope coursing through them, echoing the love that bound them. As the shadows shrank, Emma faced the spectral figure. "You can fight this," she shouted desperately at the man lost in shadows. "You have to reclaim yourself." The man squirmed against the eternal grasp of darkness, a flicker of recognition igniting. "Family," he gasped as he strained against the shadows. "It cries for you too." In that instance, his broken visage ignited something deep within Emma. She took a step closer, feeling something deep within her resonate. "Your spirit is still there," she shouted, clear and defiant. "Fight!" And suddenly, in an explosion of clarity, the man howled, struggling against the grip of shadows that forged him into a weapon of despair. "I want to be a pawn," he yelled, launching himself towards the light, slicing through the dark veil. Just as he broke free from their torment, he reached for Emma, grabbing her hand. "Release me," he begged, his eyes searching hers with desperation. With a jolt, Emma grasped the book and together they raised it high. "We will break the curse together," she shouted, and with one unified voice, they recited a single line. "In the love of family, we rise, break these chains of despair." The power surged forth, blinding light filled the clearing, illuminating every corner of the stagnant darkness. The world quaked beneath them, snapping the chains of dread binding their surroundings tighter than a noose. The shadows shrieked, furiously repelling against the brilliance. The figure of the wild-eyed man, now bathed in warmth, became one with the light. Together, Emma urged her children, feeding off the energy swirling around them. They pressed forward as the barriers shattered, bursting, like glass into sparkling shards. In an instant, the malevolent figure was engulfed, screams echoing in a cacophony of agony as pale tendrils dissipated around them. "This is our moment," Liam shouted, casting fearful determination into the vibrant glow. But just as the energy reached a peak, Emma felt a sharp jolt, a wave of power crashing down with an unexpected force. The shadow creature lashed out one last time, its voice screeching through the echoes of their triumph. "You will pay for this," Sophie screamed as shadows veiled the light in a final desperate attempt. But Emma forced the energy through her bones, their bond solidifying in a fierce grip. "Not this time," Emma roared, shielding her children, pushing against the pull of despair. "This ends here." The burst of light erupted, drowning the dark voice, and for a heartbeat, everything fell silent. The world felt weightless, and her eyes fluttered shut against the brilliance, trusting the love surrounding them. And then sunlight broke through, flooding the clearing with warmth and golden light. The shadows dissolved, and the forest around them transformed from oppressive and twisted to serene and beautiful. The air smelled fresh, filled with the scent of autumn leaves and free of despair. Emma opened her eyes, breathless, and saw the sun filtering through the trees, illuminating the place where darkness had held sway. In that moment of clarity, the weight of loss crashed down onto her, but now it felt different, like a lift of weight, a reminder that love could indeed conquer all. They were safe. Liam and Sophie threw their arms around her, tears streaming down their faces, But this time they were tears of relief. As they cried, laughter rang through the leaves. "We did it, Mom," Liam exclaimed, wiping his cheeks. "Yes, we're free," Sophie chimed in. Emma pulled them closer, warmth encasing them like a blanket. "Yes, together we faced the darkness, and love led us back." The sun rose higher, banishing remnants of their nightmare, and with newfound resolve, they stepped back onto the path, forging ahead into the light, away from the curse of the trails, leaving behind haunting echoes that would stay hidden among the trees. As they walked, Emma felt lighter, more certain than ever that whatever awaited them, they could face it together. But as they ventured deeper into the forest, filled with the thrilling promise of the future, shadows shifted in the corners of the woods. The whispers ceased, but would they ever truly be free? The threat may have been banished for now, but with every turn, the heart of the forest seemed to beat in response. A story just waiting to be told again. Thank you for following this chilling tale. If you want to hear more spine-tingling stories and exclusive content, you need to subscribe now. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help others discover this thrilling experience. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. What do you think awaits Emma and her kids next? Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who must see this conclusion. Your support makes all the difference.